We are pleased now to be joined by the IACP Officers of the Year, this trio from the Alexandria, Virginia Police Department. Thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate it. We have Officer Alex Jensen, Officer Kevin Jobe, and Officer Nicole Battaglia. Of course, these three were part of the incident back in June in which a gunman opened fire in a baseball field, wounding 4 people, including Congressman Steve Scalise and Special Agent Crystal Griner, as well as 2 others. You guys got the call about 3 minutes into it. Is that correct? Officer Jobe, what did you do? Your training kicks in, I would imagine, and you head to the scene.
Right, I had seen the call pop up on our computer screen prior to it being dispatched, and I had started kind of headed that way. When the call went out, I responded. I was very close. It was just one of those weird twists of fate that I went a different way. I had just gotten to work. I was headed to where I normally head in the morning, and I was very close to where it happened. So I got there very quickly. And
just getting into work, I mean, that's a surprise no matter what time of the shift it happens, but you really have to rely on your training, and I guess that would kick in automatically on something like this?
Yes, sir.
Officer Jensen, for yourself, did you arrive by yourself? Did you arrive with another officer? And what did you do when you get there?
Where I was and where Officer Battaglia was, as we were both headed to the scene, we kind of met up at an intersection in both of our vehicles and were able to drive down there together. So we actually ended up arriving on scene together.
Officer Battaglia, it's my understanding that once you were on scene, you kind of drew some fire at one point, allowing other members of the police and police forces to maybe get into place and work to take down the shooter. What was it like from your point of view?
Oh yeah, you're right. When I got there, I actually heard Officer Jobe over the air telling me to stop where I was. And I'd actually, at that point, already passed where the shooter was. So I just got out of my car and I started taking fire pretty readily after that. So I didn't really, to be honest, I didn't really know what was going on at the time. I just knew he was shooting at me, and I knew I had 2 other officers on scene with me. So I didn't really learn later that he was actually shooting at me and that Jensen was able to fire at him because he was distracted.
You are trained for situations like this, all of you, but you hadn't been on the force too long, and something like this happens. It has to rattle the mind a little bit, but you responded like you were supposed to.
Yeah, really, it's just based on your training. You train for these things. You don't always train every day for what you do in an active shooter situation, but you do train every day, especially in the academy and afterwards, of what you do for any kind of a shooting situation. So you always know that the engine block of a car is what's going to protect you if you can get behind that, if it's a good point of cover. So that's just what I remembered, and it's what I did.
Officer Jobe, live fire happening. I mean, you're worried obviously about yourself, but there's a lot on the line here, a lot of people's lives at risk in an open setting like this. You have members of Congress there. That had to play on you and weigh on you a little bit, I would think.
Yeah, we weren't aware at all who the victims were or who was at the field that day. I was actually confused as to why there'd be a baseball practice.
Came in as a normal shots fired call?
Yes, and but I got to say, I attributed a lot of my response to, we had recently had, our training section had put together a training on active shooter in an open environment, and I tried to assess the scene as best I could with those things that I could remember in mind, and I think it helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Officer Jensen, in an open environment like that, I mean, that's tough to handle. You don't have them corralled in a building or something like that where errant shots can go into a wall rather than through somebody's window. I mean, you had a lot to think about. Other people, innocent people getting hurt there, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, when you arrive on scene, like you were kind of saying earlier, it's almost autopilot at that point, but you just got to be sure that you're making the right decision with what you're doing, and just knowing that there's lives on the lines and you got to do your job.
And how do you know you're making the right decision?
Just based on your training. That's essentially what it comes down to.
Officer Jobe, a lot of years on the force. I mean, you've done a lot of training over the years. Did anything specifically train you for an incident like this, or did you just bring everything you've gathered over the years to help take down the shooter?
I believe God was there, because no one else was hurt once we were able to get there. And Jensen did a fantastic job from a very long distance, 67 yards, with a rifle. And it's no small feat under pressure.
And Officer Battaglia, what do you take away from this?
I mean, there's a lot to take away from this. Obviously, it was like a very scary day, I think, for everybody that was there. But, you know, my biggest takeaway was that teamwork made this possible. That's the only way that the shooter was brought down at the end of the day, was because we were all in certain positions, whether we knew it or not. We were all there in a certain spot for a reason. And because we were in those spots, the shooter was able to be taken down very quickly.
All right, well done. Officer Battaglia, Officer Jobe, Officer Jensen, thank you very much for being here and for the great work you've done, and congratulations again on the award.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.